Welcome to Model Engineers Laser. My name is Holly and this is part 4 of our jack build. Part 3 we were looking at the HBK1 chassis kit that you got with Roundhouse and using our modification kit to enable you to build jack with the right buffers and with less tweaking and work involved. We'd finished by cutting out the sections of the frame, and now the next stage of that is we need to take the buffers that you get in our modification kit, start countersinking the holes and putting the rivets in. So we're now going to go outside and start with countersinking those holes. So we've wedged this in the vise. Eddie's being my cameraman, it's not on a tripod at the moment. So this is just to give it a bit of support when I drill against it, and this is to stop the vise damaging the bit of metal that I'm drilling. I've got my drill with my countersink in there. It's on a low speed setting, and then it's just a matter So, like my previous video where we were putting rivets in, this is a different riveting method where we've got the same principle applies, bit of plate with a hole drilled in and posting the rivet through to use that as a measurement to cut them shorter because they're substantially longer. We've put our rivet dolly in the vise here, and then you can see those are the holes that I countersunk earlier. You need to put the rivet into the holes from the non-countersunk end, so they're sticking up that way, and then I want to put a rivet in the rivet dolly, putting your thumb on the top here and resting it on your index finger here to try and keep it as level as you possibly can. And then with our hammer we're going to use the rounded end. You don't need a massive hammer. People go wrong by getting big hammers, and it's not necessarily, because the idea is we want to tease this. The trick with this, because it's copper, it'll bend quite easily as we hit it. If you hit it at this angle and it pushes the rivet in that direction, you want to use the opposite end of the hammer to tease it back into the right direction. And this is where I proved myself completely wrong and not practicing what I preach. Not exactly the tidiest, but you're not going to see because that's the back and that's the front, and then we'll clean that up with the file later. So I'm back. I definitely got better at it the more practice I did. So that's the front with the rivets in nice and tidy, and then the back where we've hammered them in, file them down. Bonus points for anybody who managed to spot when I actually cut my finger during that whole process, because there was a time I just went, oh, I'm leaking. Don't know when I did it, but hey. And there comes the dog through the background, sorry. And there's the other one. Like I said, I'm not going to do all of them because this is just to show you how our kits, expansion packs, go on the jack frames, the modification kits. So the next part is to bolt it all together. How exciting. So one of the things it says in the instructions is about the extension pieces. So these are currently tabbed together. I'm going to have to cut these apart to use them and fill in the gap, because as we said in one of our other videos, the frames actually aren't long enough here for the frames, so we need to put an extension on there. So that's what these bits are here for. They're going to go on like that. We need to cut these off. But it does mean that the screws that came in them, the cheese head screws, aren't going to be long enough. So you do need some longer hexagonal head bolts. I've got a bag here. They're not ideal for what we want to use them for, but like I said, I'm not actually going to use this frame, and it'll just show you how it goes together. I've just taken my spacers and twisted them apart, ready to file off these burrs, and realised that I hadn't done the last bit of the instructions, which is drill the 3 holes in each corner to allow for these spacers to attach onto. So I'll show you on the right side, so that would fit on there. However, I have marked them out for you to see. They're 3mm from the edge, so that side, the wider end, isn't too bad. This side, however, I don't really understand how, too close for you to see, that bit of metal there between the bend and that is 3mm wide. There is no way I'm going to be able to drill on that bend there a 3mm hole without the drill wandering. I don't think I could even get Ed to do that, and he's more skilled than me where I'm a newbie. So what I was intending to do with the spacers is fit these last, on the basis that once the frames are put together, sort of that way round, once you've got your buffers on, you've got a bit of play, because if they don't quite sit square, you can adjust these to make it flush against the buffers. But actually, I think in doing the rest of it first, you can clamp that to that and actually get a better guide of where, I mean, you can see perfectly. Look how my marking is on that. I'd got it right, but as for the smaller side, that's going to be a nightmare to drill. So we're going to leave that till later. Not because I'm procrastinating, but it's just going to be easier because that is going to wander on that corner. There you go. The end of that roll is the edge of the 3mm. Yeah. We'll come back to that. So I need to file off these edges for the spacers that I've twisted, and I've also I have farmed this off to Ed. These are the spacers that are required that will go behind these here when we screw on. Keep putting the short end. So when that goes on there, these spacers will fit on here. The instructions do tell you how to make them. You can make them out of a bit of bar and drill the hole through, or you can, like me, be married to somebody who's a turner and can just whip them out quite quickly. Again, take advantage of the tools that you've got around you. So first you need the spacers. I haven't ordered the extra spacer because I knew I wasn't going to use that, and it's just for show this video. So you do need an extra one. It does tell you in the instructions that there is one spacer that is different, and it has a countersunk space at the bottom. And it does tell you in here that that is for the rear frame space. So that one goes in here. The rear frame space has one untapped hole with a countersunk side to the bottom of the frame. So it's referring to this one here. And that is this odd spacer here. So your extra one would look like these. What isn't very clear in either of the instructions, because obviously this isn't the adapted one, is that we have drilled this extra hole here that is to take the spare spacer. That will go in here. I'll show you as it all goes together. I'm not going to put this one in, but just so you can see while it's still apart, that's going to be attached there, and again on its part through there with the holes facing upward, because the plate that's going to sit on top that we supply as laser cut will sit like this and has holes pre-drilled that fit. Oh look, anybody would think it has been laser cut with precision to fit on top. So that goes like that. Again, this is just demonstration, so I'm one short. I'm not going to put it in. So let's start. We're just going to start with everything finger tight. So these are the cheese head screws. put them through there. Like I said, then we just want the finger tight for now, because we need to make sure that the frame is level when it's all tightened together. I'll just show you back the instructions. It is really clear, look, where you need to put your spacers and which holes to use, so don't forget we've got an adapted version of that. It does move. It felt a bit weird. So this is our one that's got the countersunk hole, and that's the one that needs to go in this hole here. So our spare one would go through the larger hole we drilled here. Okay. So as you can see, one side is countersunk, the other is not, so it's not particularly important at this stage, but when we do come to tighten it up, we need to make sure, unlike now, that that goes at the bottom. Oh well, we'll sort that out at the tightening stage. Finger tightening screws and plaster on your finger is not the easiest. Let's take that off. Better. I know I'm not using this frame, but there is something satisfying about kind of seeing it take shape a little bit. You have to imagine me doing that one now. A bit stiff on the other side as well. Oh well. Let's hold it in place for now. There we go, some frames together, and now we need to put our buffers on and make sure we put them on the right way, because we have a front and a rear. So because we have the spacers, which are not a standard thing in the kit that comes from Roundhouse, the cheese head screws that come in aren't going to fit. They also aren't particularly accurate, because you are going to see them externally from the from the frames. It's because I was looking at the boiler box when I said that. So that fits on there quite nicely. So these are going to go through the hole, so there's a bit of persuasion. I mean, they're not ideal for the job, but like I said, it's just so you can see what's going on. Okay, let's take that one off. That one's being reluctant. There's a bit of teasing to go through the hole on that one. There we go. So you can see the space there and how those extension pieces for the frames are going to work out really nicely in covering that gap, and also why we're going to fit them later to allow for that play. And those open. I feel like I should be saying something, but it's not really rocket science watching me put the nut on these bolts. You can see why we say this is a really good model for beginners, because like we said earlier, I don't really know as much as Ed. I know a bit, and I've not built one of these models before, but we're not really doing a lot of precision heavy engineering. So just make sure that you put your front, you don't put them on back to front when you do build them. I was going to drop that. I think I've stole these bolts from the bolts that we supply our steam blowers with, so Ed's going to be a few short now. Well, we'll just see if he actually watches the videos to know that he's going to be a few short. Do I tell him or do I not tell him? there really isn't a lot of clearance in winding that nut on there. There we go. So that is it all very loosely put together. So when we look at putting this on the flatbed to straighten it, yes, we want it as tight as we can, but don't be too particular just at this moment, because we are going to do some adjustment for the extending pieces to make sure they sit flat. But also, these bends on the frames aren't perfect, so they're going to require a bit of tweaking, probably with a hammer. The other thing to note is your extender pieces. There, little tab together then. Okay, so just to look at the larger one, I don't know if you can quite tell on the camera, I think you can, that this one is slightly larger than that one. And if we put it to the frames, it will sit there with your burr taken off, obviously, and just make it look a little bit tidier. But as a result, you're going to have to change this bolt screw, whatever you're going to use, to be slightly longer, because the ones that Roundhouse provide aren't quite long enough, and the random ones that I'm using just for a demonstration are far too long. So it's all right just to hold it in place, because we need to do some tweaking with this. I mean, you can put that on at that stage when you're screwing it on, having taken this off, and it will hold it in place while you drill through that other hole to get it in later, which is the next thing we're going to do. But just remember, that's got a larger hole for the top, and you need a larger screw for the side. And then I'm going to show you on the more awkward side what we're going to do is that's going to put on there. Can you see where I'm not? Autofocus is being weird. So can you see where I'd marked the holes that were 3 mil apart? If I can hold it, right, that side's not so bad to see, but when we turn it over, there's really not a lot of clearance for that hole there. So we're going to clamp it in place. So here we are in the vise with our extender piece clamped in. I've put both of them on now. This drill is slightly undersized, just to mark it, because this is going to be a pain to drill. So I'm just going to start the hole off in the gap. Just to spot it, so when I put the right size drill in, it doesn't wander, because it is such a tight gap. That should do it. Right, I'll change the drill bit. Okay, so I've got the right size drill bit in. I need to be careful when I go through here that I don't hit my buffer beam as I go through. Which I did anyway. There we go. Now to put some screws in. So to put the screws in, we need to tap the frame. So we've got an 8BA tap here and tapping compound. So I just want a little on there. Not too much. So tapping, need to keep it vertical. Try to do it so you can see. And you want to be gentle with it so it doesn't break. And keep going until it bites. There you go, look, so it's bitten. so I can let go. So when tapping, we're going to do half a turn on and then quarter turn back. Again, being very gentle. If it doesn't want to go, don't force it. And then just a quarter turn back. Half a turn, quarter turn back. That's gone through, it has gone through. So I'll then take it off. Now to repeat that for every other hole. So to attach our extra little plate that we have here, and I've taken the size of there, we've got some 8BA bolts there. And handily in the little pack that you get from Roundhouse, you get a little set of spanners, so I'll find the 8BA one in there. Now this is where I need to try and do it and see. So we only tapped the frame, we didn't tap the extension plate, so we should just slide in there and we can do it finger tight without the spanner. And the same. That one. And turn it round. And the light's better that way for you to see. So I've just done those finger tight for now. I've even done them finger tight to be fair, because my pot's going to cook in. Sorry. 8BA. Does it fit on that head? Let's get a smaller one. I think it looked a little bit big. That's better. So we had this on the drill bed to make sure it was nice and flat. We did our tweaking with the hammer. You saw that off camera. Well, you didn't see that because it was done off camera. So now there's a bit of play in that. You can see the gap appears and goes. So we want to make sure as we're tightening it that you pull it nice and flush to the buffers at the front to fill the gap. And there we go. So once that's all painted black, it would look quite nice and tidy. So you can see from a cosmetic point of view, those do look nicer than the screws, and you can see how that has covered that up quite nicely. and also how tight, waiting for the camera to focus, how tight that one was there. That was a pain. I'm so glad we did that at this stage and not early, because I really would have messed that up. I'm not that skilled to do that. Like I said, this is only a demo piece. I'm not going to do all of them because it's a pain and I actually want to get on my real loco that I'm building. So that would be, how if I turn, that would be your frame. Don't forget you'll have your longer screw in there. That sits on there. And that one sits on there. You need to do the motion first. This would go on later, but the instructions do detail that in the magazine when you do that. So you don't really need me to hand hold you through there. Now the clamp's gone, you can see how that sits. It's going to fall off if I don't do. That's a perfect sit through there. So the spacer, our imaginary spacer, the holes would screw through there, and you can actually see the hole in that spacer there, the one that was the countersunk one. Fits perfectly there. Space on fireman side, coming on TR logo fireman side, and then for that one, the space at the front, the hole in the front goes on TR driver side. And there we have it. That is the kit that you get for our expansion kit, adaptation kit, not expansion kit, adaptation kit. That's it for this video, and next video I'll be back on our actual build. What I'm going to do between now and starting that video is I'm going to give the frames a coat of paint and give our cranks and wheels a coat of paint. You don't need to see me prime and put paint on, but you'll see a little bit of a difference from when you left it when it starts. So I'm really looking forward to showing you that. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can see as soon as the videos are updated that way, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks ever so much.